And you're doing the introductions right now?
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to Agility Matters. Tonight we have Troy May. He's a flâneur, which I was just told is French, which I can't pronounce, obviously. He's also a bit of a smuggler, long-term serial entrepreneur. We're going to talk about the entrepreneur aspect, the ups and downs, business in general, but we're going to flow into, I guess, strategy, but emergent strategy, responding to the changes in not only customer demand, but employee demands, cultural demands. Let's just crack into it. So, Troy, welcome to the show, mate.
Well, thank you, Michael. Good evening.
Good evening and good morning to those over in the UK. And if you have Russia online again, it's very early for you guys. To Troy, Flâneur. So it's French. Well, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going on about it. So where's it from? So
It's French. It means an observer, someone who's kind of well-to-do, but a little bit outside of society, that was used in a slightly derogatory manner. Someone told me very recently that there was images of a guy in suit and tux walking his tortoise down the street, and he was called a flâneur. I stole the term from Nassim Taleb,
That's brilliant.
our man of Black Swan fame. But I thought it was appropriate. I've spent a lot of time not quite fitting in, observing what's going on. I was a Kiwi lad growing up in the West who enjoyed reading books, not quite the right fit. I went to Australia as a Kiwi. I went to China as an outsider's perspective. I think that's weakness and
Nice.
strength. Flâneur.
So when you explain that, knowing a little bit about you, I'm like, this makes sense now. This makes sense. So I will press you on it. So bit of an outsider, bit of a no doesn't mean no, right? So is that because you've always been a bit of a, I'm going to push against the machine, or just the fact is that you're stubborn and refuse to quit?
Neither. It's just
Neither?
neither.
Okay.
I just spent a lot of time in my youth wasting it on books. And what I was reading and what I was seeing, that there was differences. And as a Westie, someone who grew up in West Auckland in way back when, and still to this day, I think places like Massey don't have a lot going on. So observing was part of my nature. Sometimes observing it and making comments on what I observed didn't go down too well with some people.
I love that. Okay, cool. So when did you, because obviously serial entrepreneur, right?
Yep.
Very young age, because the reason why I asked this, because I started reading massively at a young age, right? And I never read fiction. I always read non-fiction. I thought I was a genius by 17. Obviously not. Thought I'd be retired by 19. Obviously not.
Mm-hmm.
So how did business start for you then?
Oh, I think my earliest business endeavor was my older sister was having a birthday party, and some guys bought a lot of beer and some guys ran out of beer. And I was able to buy some from some guys at a cheap rate and sell it to the other guys for more. There was arbitrage. That was my first profit-making venture.
I love that. That's great. I'll add to that for myself. So I started doing paper rounds.
Right.
Everybody wanted a paper round. I was the nice guy who got paper rounds. So I got paid £10 for a paper round, and I paid someone 8.
Beautiful. There you go. Bit of arbitrage, right?
Yeah. So that's all it was. I stored the papers at my house, and for some reason, no one asked questions of why Michael can deliver 2,000 papers in a week.
So, how many paper runs did you build the empire up to?
Only, I think it's 9 rounds. It all stopped because my sister got on because she wanted some extra money, and my mum clicked and said it was unfair to be taking money away from other people, and she rang up the people and reported me.
Oh, come on. That's not unfair. That's scaling the business.
and what's amusing is my mum's a business owner. So I thought that was quite unfair at the time when I was a kid. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. You employ people at a lower rate than the value you're producing.
You're billing them out at a higher hourly rate, right? And she's collecting the difference. And my
Yep.
problem is I would see stuff like that and I would argue the case.
Yeah. But mum was always right. Mum was always right. So that was my first one. So that was about, I think I was about 12 or 13. And I never really stopped after that. But obviously you carried on properly then. So, and you got to obviously China and Thailand and.
Well, I didn't actually carry on properly. I was just a random, like, dropped out of school, wasn't interested, didn't feel like I'd fit into New Zealand, but I didn't actually know what was happening in New Zealand either, right? So I left when I was like 19, went to Australia, odd jobbed around a bit, had some work with a cool catering company. It was Mustard Catering, and they were doing $1,000 a head catering for people like Robert Holmes a Court and Alistair Norwood and that kind of crew, right? People with $50 million homes down on the Swan River, that kind of
Wow.
deal.
Yeah.
And it was fun. I liked the rush of it. I liked the buzz of setting up a party for 1,000 people, and it was $1,000 a head, right? And we'd back a 5-ton truck up to a bottle shop and empty the bottle shop and back it up to the party.
What time frame we're talking here? $1,000 in the 80s or?
Yeah, yep. It would have been
Wow.
88, something like that. Yep.
Yeah. Just after the stock crash. Wow. Okay.
John Roberts, multiplex in Australia, son's 21st birthday. Pull up there with a marquee, doesn't fit. He says, cut it. I was like, what? This is a $40,000 marquee. He's like, cut it. Call the boss. He's like, yeah, come back, get the old one, quick.
That's brilliant.
And the son for his 21st got a 21-foot Bertram launch, and the 18-year-old that got all shitty about it got a brand new BMW, just shut him up. They had Mental as Anything playing. One of my family relations, Ricky May, was playing there. They were all getting, again, 40 grand a pop to turn up. The glass that you're holding there, the wine glass, we were, Mustard Catering was leasing glasses out for the night, $9 per night for these crystal champagne flutes. And Mental as Anything was drinking champagne and smashing the flutes.
Yeah. I've never been able to understand, because I grew up in, obviously, we talked about beforehand, I grew up in London, mostly in the southeast. We never saw wealth. Like, we never saw BMWs or crazy wealth. In New Zealand, I think it's much closer together.
Yes.
Where we grew up, I remember my mum telling me we can't afford to go to the other side of London to see our family. And it's like £10 of petrol. You just couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting. You come to this country, and there's still a lot of people who are on the low economical side, and yet they live so close to people who are in $50 million mansions. So did seeing that sort of drive you forward? Where did you go afterwards?
I don't know. Here in New Zealand, it's tucked away. There's plenty of money here. It's tucked away. We don't talk about it so much, but there is a big gap. But in Australia, just working in that environment, doing these shows and parties and stuff. I mean, like, the Queen came to town. She drinks Dubonnet.
Wow.
I was going to talk about something, but I won't on that one.
We'll keep that for offline.
Yeah, indeed. So I was always into the martial arts, and I came across this guy in Perth, and he was teaching the nature, the internal styles. He was a very cool guy. But one of the guys I was training with said, I'm going to go up and study in Beijing. And I was like, you can do that? And he was like, yeah. I said, would you mind if I came along with you? He's like, oh, mate, it's taken me 6 months to get all my paperwork together, and I'm going in 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, well, look, if I can get my paperwork together in 3 weeks, is it okay with you? And he was, yeah, sure. Then I got my paperwork done in 3 weeks. I told my girlfriend I'm going to Beijing. She's like, "Where's that?" I went into the catering company, the mustard, and told my boss, "I'm going to Beijing." He's like, "Where's that?" This is in '89,
Uh,
and we,
That's so hard to comprehend, obviously, nowadays. Yeah, but that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah. So China hadn't been opened that long.
Mm.
It was opened in '76, but nobody
Right.
really started going there until the mid '80s, right? We
Wow. Okay.
we flew in and we knew nothing. I mean, like, it was hilarious. It was just, and I loved it because it was so chaotically different from what anything I'd experienced before. And I just really fit in. It was something that I enjoyed. The guy I was traveling with was hopeless. He was unable to deal with it, and that's okay. And we flew in early May
Mm.
1989, and we went to Tiananmen Square, and it was just packed. And we had no clue what was going on. There was over 1 million people in the square, waving flags and chanting and all happy and singing songs and stuff. And we looked at each other and said, "Well, shit, where's the hotel?" and off,
Yeah.
and off we went. It was just such a radical place. And then when it all went to shit, we were kind of stuck there trying to figure out what to do. It was like, oh, where do we go? And we ended up going to Japan.
Nice.
Yep.
And Japan, obviously, I remember when I was a kid, Japan was like the China back then, right? It was producing everything. It was cheap. So I'm assuming it was more Western back then.
China back then was a totally different world.
Mm.
It still is a different world, but to give you an example, I met my business partner when I returned to China. That was the following year in early 1990, and he was earning 40 renminbi a month, which is about $6,
Wow.
right? And I had tons of well, back then you couldn't spend local money and you couldn't spend US dollars. You had to have FEC,
Mm.
foreign exchange certificates, right? It's like
Yeah,
traveler's checks for foreigners. There was
I remember
one,
those.
there was one store in the entire city that sold bread, milk, cheese, foreign foods, if you like. Wong is there earning 40 renminbi a month, but he didn't need the money. The done way, your work
Mm.
permit covered everything. It provided you with the job. It provided you with accommodation. It provided you with the education for your children. It provided your health service, everything, and including ration tickets. So we'd go to the markets, and I'd go, "Oh, we get a couple. We get some of that and some of this." No. I was like, "I got money. I'll get it." No, I don't have a ration ticket. Right?
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
He worked in a taxi dispatch office, and to drive a car was a high level, high profile, good job, right?
Yeah.
Because cars were rare. To
Mm.
actually be able to drive a car for a living, awesome.
Mm.
I can still remember my jaw dropping open after a couple of years in the early days watching a family in a car. Oh my God, there's a family. It's a private car. Unbelievable. All right. That is, where China was. When we were up there, Beijing is got a big central square and
Mm.
it's got ring roads that go around the outside. Okay. They were completing the second ring road when we were there in the early days. I think they finished the seventh ring road now.
Yep. That's about right. And there's traffic jams for about 3 days of all those cars. Yeah.
You get used to traffic jams.
Yeah. So you travel around, obviously China, Japan.
Yeah, Japan, then back to Australia, back up to China. Uh,
Mm.
ended up ended up selling tickets on the Trans-Siberian black market tickets, and then taking a train from Beijing to Moscow for about first class train tickets for about $20,
Mm.
right? But again, that arbitrage that we were talking about a little bit
Yep.
earlier, there was a couple of Polish guys who actually had New Zealand citizenship, and they'd figured it out. They were buying tickets for nothing in Hungary, and then
Yep.
getting to Beijing. What made them valuable was being able to book them. Like,
Yep.
you'd go to CYTS 3 months to the day in advance and book the seats, and then you had a ticket on the Trans-Siberian. But no backpacker or traveler wanted to come to Beijing 3 months to the day, go in a queue,
Yep.
get ticket validated. So there was some good money in it, and there was some companies been doing it for years.
And just for those who are listening, arbitrage is basically buying something and then selling it for something else, more profit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can think that's just normal business, right? The whole idea, though, is, and Troy, correct me if I'm wrong here from my definition, but it's meant to go away over time. Lots of companies use arbitrage, but the whole idea is it's actually a decaying market, because as the market opens, the arbitrage decreases over time. So you're meant to not have that opportunity over time.
Well, the idea is you get competition, and that eats away at that delta on the arbitrage. But if you can get enough scale and volume, then you've got a moat that can surround that arbitrage, a la Facebook, a la Google, a la, Apple to a certain degree, where it becomes very, very expensive to compete to eat into that arbitrage. Right.
Correct. You create a bit bigger barrier to entry. I guess the reason why I say that is because obviously we've got a lot of Kiwis on the line. And I feel like a lot of New Zealand business is arbitrage. It's because the global market barrier to entry was so difficult to come into this country that companies were able to basically buy goods from overseas and sell them to locals at higher prices.
Right.
And yet that's now decaying.
Yep.
And that whole like almost commoditization of a lot of markets has become such a problem that companies in New Zealand are just going under and under if they don't innovate, if they don't have the right emergent strategy to actually completely change their direction based upon new information. So that's why I love that word, because it's like arbitrage was, it was in growing markets, in bespoke things, it totally works. Mm-hmm. We talked about crypto a little while ago off cam.
Yeah.
Arbitrage and crypto, totally. I can still today buy on one website and still on another website of Bitcoin and make money. No. And I was doing not as much, but I think it was 2016. I could do that all day, every day, and make a couple $100 a week. Can't do it now.
But now there's like on Ethereum chains and lots of other chains is now there's layer 2 arbitrage where you buy and where you're doing short-term loans basically. I mean, that's the bank's business is arbitrage. They get money in at X amount, and then they've got to lend it out. The funny thing about banking is it's about as risky as it gets.
It's amusing with banking, right? And I've worked for 3 major banks.
Uh-huh.
Four major banks. And I remember when I was in one of them, Aussie Bank, and we're having some wine, and obviously I say things I shouldn't say when I'm drinking. And I said to them, you do know banking won't be around in 20, 30 years' time, right? Or if it's around, it'll be completely different. And they laughed at me. And I said, well, here's the reasons why. Not only crypto, but the fact is that of decentralization, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, all these things. I think it was 2016, 2015 at the time. And they laughed. Fast forward 5 years, and we've now got, fine, it's still a tiny market, but crowdfunding's huge compared to what it was 5 years ago.
Right, but how many people are crowdfunding their mortgages?
Not yet. There's a blockchain for that.
It'd be an interesting mission to do the risk assessment. I mean,
yeah. So Harmony started, right? So Harmony's got Squirrel. I think Squirrel was looking at doing mortgages on crowdfunding.
Right.
Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But I think that Squirrel's starting to do it, but it's very low risk mortgages. So I was doing risk analysis at ASB at the time when Harmony started doing variable loan rates.
Yeah.
So we introduced variable loan rates at ASB.
Right.
But we still couldn't go lower than Harmony.
Why? How did Harmony get that? Where did their arbitrage advantage come from?
Well, I think about this, right? So if I put money in the bank, at the moment, if I put money in the bank, I get 1%.
You're getting
Troy,
1%? I'm getting 0.5 at the moment.
Oh, geez, is it really that bad? Okay. 0.5 then. Yeah, if I said to you, hey, Troy, give me $1 million, I'll give you 5%.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, you got to trust me. But 5% for me is cheap as chips right now.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to get 100K, I've got to go for at least 9.95%. So crowdfunding, the arbitrage is actually quite large.
Yes.
But the risk factor is too big for most people. So, but if you were Troy, we're going to lend me $1 million and I split it between 1 million people, your risk factor goes down massively.
The individuals, but still en masse, a lot of people are going to get burnt on that one. This is something.
Totally agree.
This was something that was a massive problem when me and Wong's first were building the business in China. There were no credit lines, there were no checking accounts, there was no bank credit whatsoever. Right? The credit lines were individual companies lending money between each other to help with cash flow.
Yeah.
And there's only so much extra money that you can allocate to give to someone else, and then you've got to turn it around and give it back to you. Otherwise, your cash flow is dead. I still remember the first time.
Sounds like the European Union.
Oh.
I love it. This is turning into a financial show.
Well, isn't that the problem with where you've got a central bank that's not able to set central tax rates?
Exactly. It's the whole fiscal policy versus monetary policy. People say, oh, but European Union should run like a US of A.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but they set monetary and fiscal policy. The euro can set fiscal policy, but not monetary policy. Except monetary policy, not fiscal policy. Right?
You got a single currency, but you don't have single taxation.
Correct. And you can't stop people from loaning money. So I always remember someone told me the example once. Germany loans the money to buy German vehicles to companies that can't actually afford. It then recommends from Germany to borrow money from another country to pay for that debt. And it recommends that country borrows from another country.
Right.
And then that was fine for 10 years. And there's like a house of cards comes flying down. But I guess we all know this now, right? It kind of makes sense. But now we've had this thing called quantitative easing. And of course, quantitative easing is a whole other bit of fun. And it works, right? We were saying earlier on, it does work in the short term.
Well, what alternatives have you got?
Well,
you want to pump money into the system because there's not enough money flowing through the system, right?
Yeah.
Money is a level of trust, and fundamentally, it's a token of trust. I trust it. You're going to give me this token in exchange for that token.
It's value, right? Yep.
And when someone's not working, then your risk factor goes up. There's less trust. So how do you combat that? Well, you start squirting trust into the system, give people more tokens so that the whole thing starts working.
But then if people don't trust the token maker,
well, then you have a problem.
And I think that's what's happening now. Our big asset, I guess, inflation. So I've been quoted for saying it. I believe that we're in stagflation now. We're in depression and it's stagflation. Mm-hmm. So I believe, for those who are unaware, we've probably got a whole bunch of agile coaches on the line going, what are you guys going on about? But yeah, so
talking about. Yep.
Where's my emergent strategy? We'll get to that. Chris Pope, we'll get to that. Honestly, we will. No, but but this is all interlinked, right? All these factors happen and we've got to actually respond to these changes. So being aware of quantitative easing is actually quite important. But stagflation is coming. I think it's already here. So stagflation is that you get inflation of assets, mm-hmm. or a devalue of your currency, however you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. Then you've got lack of economical growth, so therefore no jobs. So if prices go up, your wages either go down or they stagflate. Yep. So you're in a depression, but prices are increasing.
Mm.
So it's a double-edged sword, right? We had one in the 1970s, but we came off the gold standard and that fixed it. Well, we're off the gold standard now, so we've printed trillions and trillions of dollars. But people are going, well, then the money's worth less. So therefore, they're putting more money into the stock market, more money into the prices. Yes, it's more liquidity, but it's more liquidity of market that maybe actually is worth a little bit less than it was. So yeah, it's an interesting hypothesis. So let's try and bring us back to business, right? The
Right.
impact for me, I could chat about this all day long. I really could. I love finance. And by the way, this episode is sponsored by Little Giant Barossa Shiraz. Hashtag not actually sponsored by, before they sue me. Very nice, by the way, for those who ask.
Barossa Valley, can't go wrong.
Yeah, it's actually really, sorry guys, Australian again. I can't find a Shiraz made in New Zealand that tastes nice. Please, someone recommend something if it actually there actually is one.
In New Zealand, head for the Pinot Noirs, right? If you know,
There's just no body in Pinot Noirs.
you,
I'll test throughout the week and see if I can find one for next week.
you need to refine your taste.
I do need to refine my taste. This is true. I thought buying the nice glass would make me more refined.
The heavy-bodied hit of pepper.
Exactly. So this is what's happened, right? And this is why I really like the idea. And when Colot recommended me to you, I was like, yes, bring you on board, because we get so many people who just think like me, right? We're coaches, we're management consultants, we talk the talk, but you've walked the walk, right? You've seen things change so much. You've played the arbitrage game, you've won, you've failed, and we're going through another stage right now, right? COVID-19, people are so focused on the virus and not on the economical impact, not on the globalization, not on the trend of people. We were joking about this whole game stock,
Yes.
which is the funniest thing I have seen, and it will probably be the news of this year.
This is entertainment, and this is a sideshow and a
Brilliant.
distraction, and eat the rich kind of thing.
It is. It is.
In rebellion to the situation everyone's looking at, right?
Yeah. Every socialist, you should be buying game stock. What's it called? GameSupply.com. I think this is not financial advice. Please don't sue me. But this is happening, right? People have realized the power that they've got. And I think it's a little bit because they've been home a lot and they've realized how much influence they've got. Democracy, put it aside, that's politics, right? Let's ignore that. But actual people have realized that democracy based on money is far more powerful. Vodafone pulled their funding from MediaWorks due to a racist comment on one of the radio hosts.
All right.
People loved it. It was a brilliant strategic decision by Vodafone. I'm hoping they did it from a moral point of view, but it was a great strategic decision. Because people are really his name Jonathan, CEO. I saw the post he made. Jason, he made a post on LinkedIn, and I love the love button on LinkedIn because what you're finding is you'll get hundreds of comments. They'll tell their friends. Vodafone does this. That tell their friends. The word of mouth advertisement's far more powerful now than the actual MediaWorks would have been in the first place. Right, so people have got power, right? So how do companies now, Troy? How do we survive? Let's go with survive first. How do we survive, Troy?
Well, I think most companies, if you're going to get anywhere, you're going to have some sort of value system. You're going to have some sort of principles as North Stars.
Yeah.
There's the difference between principles. Think of it as more like your strategy based on those principles. Your tactics are going to change, but where you're aiming for isn't, and why you're aiming for that isn't. The days of I don't think the days of just making money are over, right? If that's your primary guiding light, but I think there's just too much going on that without some value structure, you're not going to be able to filter what the changes that are coming down the pipe, right? And that was something in China. it's a very pragmatic space.
Mm.
But and people are very quick to they look at things in the short term, not the long term. And it's a brutal jungle kind of approach to dealing with things.
Well, westernized culture, when you look at multiculture, for instance, a lot of Iwis have got 50 to 100-year strategic visions.
Right.
And I was like flabbergasted when I heard about this, and then I spoke to a local iwi, and I actually found out that this is true. That they don't have the next quarter, the next quarter, the next quarter. It's about what are my tamariki and so on actually going to live like.
How does that filter the choices of decisions that they make on the short term? How does it whittle
It's
down?
they're always aligning it to the greater vision. You know, how is that going to affect my children's children,
Mm.
as opposed to how is that going to affect my pocket in the next 3 months, which is very interesting. It's not very well known, and it's amusing because we're kind of going in that direction with business now, right? Exactly what you said. Almost have a vision of values. It's beyond the quarterly paycheck, but yet cultures like I can't remember the actual wording. Sorry for those talking the Flâneur, but Moldydom, I think you might call it. Moldydom, they actually focus on that long-term vision, which means all the decisions they make today are about adapting for that long-term vision. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's very interesting, and it's almost aligned to how we speak about green cultures and about looking towards the greater end result. What do you think?
Um, I'm familiar with reasonably long-term views, but not 80 to 100 years. But
Crazy, right?
I don't see how that makes a difference. If you've got a set of principles in terms of how
Hmm.
you're going to do business, okay, then that helps you decide on which side of the lines, when decisions come down those pipes and they're coming down all the time,
Yeah.
how are you going to take them, right? One of the things surviving in China was we accepted responsibility for our mistakes,
Hmm.
paid for them, right? But we went to war with people that if it wasn't our fault, then we weren't going to deal with that.
Yeah.
And that rule of principle of taking responsibility for the mistakes that you've made and paying out of pocket for it, it's a monetary guide, but it's not a long-term um, environmental thing, if you like,
Hmm.
or political endeavor. In the early days in China, it was just too cutthroat to even be thinking about that kind of stuff. This is where the emergent strategies kind of thing came out. Me and Wong would sit there and we had this thing where we were petrified of getting stuck. The worst thing that could ever happen was just not making a decision. And very often, decisions got hidden away or mistakes didn't rise up to the surface in time and they got exponentially more expensive the longer it took you to find them. Uh,
Yeah.
Part of that process was we always had this joke. It was like, let's take one step, look around, and then take another step. But we'd rather take a wrong step in terms of making a bad decision than no decision whatsoever.
Yeah. Because the actual cost of not making the decision.
God, yeah, that's the worst thing to do. Get stuck. We would talk about like it's a gamble. Okay, we go to the casino. This is how much we're prepared to lose.
Mm.
Take the hit or not. But just standing around not making a decision. And so this take a step, look around, and then figure out where to take the next step. That was our basic premise for pretty much everything that we did.
Mm.
Um, and we had to find all sorts of interesting ways of doing the finances and what have you. Now, this is where it connects into the agile. I don't know if you know Alistair Coburn.
Yep. Yeah, I know Alistair.
Okay.
Well, sorry, I should say I know of Alistair.
All right. So
Shouldn't say I know him.
I, I bumped into Alistair in Thailand. And,
Oh, awesome.
and he was giving a talk and he was only answering in stories. So you'd ask a question, answer in stories. And I turned up there and I put my hand up and asked, what is agile? And he just looked at me and said, what are you doing here? And I said, people were talking about agile a lot, but I didn't know what it was. So I come along to a seminar to find out. Now, his thing is what he calls the heart of agile, right? And
Okay.
the heart of agile is basically talk to your customer, produce something, put it out there,
Nice. Yeah.
observe, reflect on it. How can we improve it, and put it out again? And I
Yeah.
immediately connected with him and said, to take a step, look around, take another step, look around, and make decisions as you go. And he's like,
Yeah.
it's pretty much how thing. I mean, that's how that is emergent strategy, but
Yeah.
operating on the sense of collecting the data, just taking
Mm.
steps. That's not an emergent strategy.
No.
That's just running blind. But taking the time to absorb what's going on from your new perspective and your new situation, and it's really tricky when you get. Often you'll take a step and go, "Shit, why did I take a step? That was stupid. What am I doing here?"
Go back. Go back. Go back.
Well, the thing is, you got new context and new information from
Yeah.
that step that you didn't have before the step. So it was impossible for you to know that. If you did, you wouldn't have taken the step in the first place, right?
Yeah.
But your strategy then evolves, it emerges from the data that you're collecting and reflecting upon as you're moving forward, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because I remember reading an article from Mintzberg, and he said, it's in 1994, the end is nigh for strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we still have it today. But what I think Mintzberg was doing is he was looking at companies like yours, companies that are up and coming, companies that took over the market. And they did. They dominated the market through 2000. And now we have Facebook, Amazon, everybody else who do use emergent strategy with planning, of course. But what they do is their strategy is to have no strategy. And you saw that on the bar, right?
The strategy is, it's a scientific.
Yeah.
Take a step, observe. There's a hypothesis getting tested in that step.
Totally.
That provides you feedback and data. If you're ignoring that data, if you're not analyzing it, if you're not reflecting on it, then you really don't have a strategy. There is nothing going on there. It is not agile, because if you don't analyze what's happened in order to make the next step of your decisions, then
Yeah.
you're stepping blind anyway, right?
Yeah, and that's Bassot's reflection, right? So if you're not reflecting, and for those who don't know Bassot's work, if you know retrospectives, you will know reflection. But a reflection is when you actually reflect on the step you just took and take action to improve on the step you're going to take. And when you read Bassot's journal on Harvard Business Review, you're just like, yep, that's just common sense, right?
Yes.
But Troy, it's not common sense in big business. And I think what's happened is the barriers to entry has been decreasing due to technology. Companies are coming in. The incumbents are like, oh my God, this is what's going on. They hire people like Alistair to say, hey, teach us this agile thing. Teach us to be more like the smaller companies so we can crush them.
Well, here's a good story for you, because I liked Alistair, and I said, let's catch up, because he was in Thailand for a few days, and he said, I don't really want to go to a bar. And I said, well, come to the gym with me. He's like, oh,
Nice.
I'm into that. So I coached him how to deadlift and squat and bench. And he was getting a little bit tuckered out in 33 Celsius heat with a high humidity.
Oh,
Then
God.
I realized, oh, shit, you're not, oh, he was like 60. He's in good nick. And he was like, he cracked on to me because he was like,
I did not realize he was that. Hang on. That's not, what's the other word? Not old.
I didn't realize he was that old. But
Wisdom. I don't hear that much wisdom.
He's a fit dude. He's a fit dude. He set a world record for swimming at some point.
Wow.
But he was like, I enjoy the conversation with you because it's a little bit broader than with the software guys. And he says, actually, I'm a hardware guy. I was with IBM with their big iron. I was a supercomputer dude. That was my thing. I can walk and talk hardware. Software, I've been around it long enough now that I can talk it, but I don't walk it. Right?
Interesting.
And what you were just referencing before about large companies, he was with IBM, and this is the story that he told me. They were switching to services, right?
Mm.
His boss said, Alistair, we need to find out what the best practices are for services and software delivery.
Yeah.
And she put him on a plane, first class tickets, go find out. And he went everywhere for a year. He went to
Wow.
banks in South Africa. He went to companies in London. He went to New York and South America and everywhere else on the company ticket. And what he found back then was like these massively well planned out, down to the detail Gantt chart kind of processes were failing left, right, and center. Right? Stuff wasn't getting out the door. Things had changed, and no one was able to absorb those changes in the process of trying to push things out, and it was just messy. And he said, I went to a couple of different companies, and they were doing really well. They were just sort of pushing out bits and then bits more and looking and bit more, and that worked. But they were, he gets back after a year, sits in front of his boss, and she goes, "So, what's best practice?" Well, actually, having no best practice is about the best practice I can see. And she's like,
Chin.
like,
Brilliant.
get the fuck out of my office. I didn't pay you money. I need a report. I need something. Right? So he was like, he wasn't just on his own on this. He'd met a bunch of people as he was traveling around, and lots of people were discussing these kind of issues and problems. And they went off, I don't know, somewhere up the north of the US. And
Utah. Yep.
and said, we've got to, well, at least I do, I've got to go back to my boss with something, and I can't just say nothing. So we've got to have something in an uncodified code or a codified uncode, whatever you want, like that. It's got to encapsulate that paradox.
Yeah.
So that at least I don't get my ass kicked. And that was basically the manifesto came out for him in that part of that process.
Nice.
There's a natural function of businesses getting larger is they turn into big dinosaurs with lots of tentacles and weird arms and bureaucratic structures that are large, and they don't know what each other's doing, and the communications get really complicated and siloed off. And it's hard for a large company as a whole agile with most company structures and most company internal communications. That's the nature of the beast, right?
And why do you think that let's go drill down on that? Why do you think that it's almost natural for a big company to grow and become this hierarchical, tentacle-like bureaucracy? Why is that normal, do you think? Is it who's running the company, or is it just human nature?
Well, I mean, me and Wong knew nothing. We were sitting there just building shit and orders and trying to figure stuff out as we moved forward. But the last thing we want to do is get stuck. And we were very freewheeling. I would sit there and interview 5 people every morning, whether we needed somebody or not. That was for morning cup of coffee, 5 interviews. Next, we were growing like mushrooms. And at one point, there was no documentation and no structure. I'd walk in, grab a pile of cash, put it in my pocket, fly to Shanghai, fly to London, business meetings, that kind of stuff. But over time, that's needed to be accounted for, and it needed records for that. And then we had other salespeople going out, and would send a guy to Italy, and he would spend up large and bring nothing back. So then you'd have systems of, well, we need accounting for what you spent and why and who you saw, and then nobody would read that. And the accounts department grew from a couple of girls in the back office to like 25 ladies crunching through numbers and procedures and processes for recording the records of the records.
Yeah.
So that at some point there was this imagined accountability.
Wow. So even though you and Wong were pretty onto it, you knew that you need to adapt, you need to have fast test markets, still it became that kind of process even as you as leaders? Is it just a natural flow? Is that what I'm hearing?
It was, I don't know if flow is the appropriate word when you start, the natural accretion of,
Love it.
right? As you got bigger, you got more layers of paperwork. You forgot why that paperwork was there. But, and actually, it was funny because even the culture itself, there was layers of it that were like sediment of, oh, I remember those days. And people had that thinking, right? But we weren't that company anymore, and that kind of thinking didn't apply. And we would just push them off to a different division, and they would do their thing because it was still making some money, but it wasn't the core of what we were doing anymore.
Yeah. See, I had something similar to you. So I remember I was 19, and my first business that touched that $1 million turnover. I always, it's always good. It means nothing. For those who are running a business, it means absolutely nothing. But you feel good, right? You feel good. It's like,
Absolutely.
It's a couple of extra zeros. And I started hiring people. And I started hiring people who, this is my mistake. So there's similarities. We got to 34 FTE, and I started hiring what I class as professionals. I had a professional general manager. I had a professional marketing advisor. I had a professional this person's from a bank.
Right.
He will know what he's talking about.
Right.
We had a family of 12 people, and it was a family. We got drunk together. We had fun together. Like, it was a good time. I mean, bear in mind, so my industry was poker, blackjack, nights out. It was fun, right?
Yep.
And then we got to 34 people, and it felt like a corporation where people were getting fired for not turning up to work because they were hungover. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't care about that. Did the client care? Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's in the procedure notes. What procedure notes?
Well, it's your company.
I mean, this makes sense, but I didn't approve this. So.
Oh, I didn't approve it? Oh, the hierarchy already.
Good point. Sorry. Yeah, very good point. I was so 19 through to 23. I grew into basically a trustless person who didn't trust my managers. I didn't trust my staff. I didn't trust anyone. So I grew that book to basically be like,
that was the rules.
This is what you do.
Yeah.
And do you know what's funny? That's what they did. They didn't spend the overtime. They didn't do the things the client wanted. They didn't respond to the customer needs. They did exactly what was in my book, letter for letter.
Yep.
And do you know what's funny? We lost half our business in about a 6-month period from a competitor.
Yeah.
Who brought the fun back. So I feel you, right? My mistake. I know it's my mistake. But I find that I'm seeing that same thing. And what I'm hearing from you is a little bit similar.
Yeah. Very much so. There was just that process of, as the numbers got to a point where, I still enjoyed that space where it was the team, the hub, the dozen, the 20, then you knew what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
Right. And they knew what you were doing. And it was easy to communicate. There weren't silos of specifics. But once we got to around 100 people.
That's that number.
Started to see people that did I talk to them before they got employed? I was part of the process of interviewing everybody, but then we ended up with an HR person who then brought them on according to a job description. And as we got up to 200 people, then there was people that didn't know who I was and wondering why I'm coming to their desk. And I had to go and navigate through the department manager, who would then tell me what the team manager was, who would then find the merchandiser that was handling the order for the customer that was just screaming at me because there was issues, right? And then this person would go, well, what's this Bellwhite doing sitting here, Oh, well, he's your boss. He owns half the company. Oh, and then they're freaking out. And there was this layers of stuff that would just happen. Now, I'm of the approach that I like to treat people like adults and expect that if I treat them like adults, they will treat me back as adults. But there tends to be a level of skin in the game, so to speak, that is required for a certain amount of adulthood. There
Mm.
are large enough people that come from cultures that, their culture's already pre-existing and preset, and it's really freaking hard to change either people's mindsets or the cultural mindset of a company,
Yep.
right?
100%.
And the culture starts at the top. If me and Wong had a shitty attitude, that would filter down into the kind of stuff that happens in the rest of the company.
Yeah. If you don't trust people, your managers don't trust people,
Mm.
and so on. Yep. Totally agree.
And if people are filling out forms and paperwork instead of dealing with the real shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that forms and papers, at least for us, was we didn't have the tech. Everyone was running around with spreadsheets, right? I would die for a dashboard. I dreamt of a dashboard that would just give me an update rather than having to constantly poll merchandisers and managers and department heads to get inputs as to where are we on this, right? The customer's polling us. Why can't we have the customer plug into this somehow? It just wasn't there, right?
Yeah, just slightly too early. I mean, now it's obviously very simple. The SaaS guys are probably going, it's easy. Data. Here's a report.
There's an API for that.
Yeah. It's simple, right? I mean, I run my entire company with Cola, and we have no IT department. I have no directors here. Where's my audiovisual crew? Technology is so freely available now. It's a lot easier. The barrier entries have dropped a lot. So we're going to see more competition, aren't we? More competition, more driving. Is that going to hurt pre-existing incumbents? Like, as in...
I hope so.
Well, I hope so as well, actually.
I hope so. There is a lot of evolution going on. Okay. It is the nature of big dinosaurs to be able to fend for themselves. And if there's a lot of little mammals running around their feet, good. The ecology, because those mammals grow up and turn into dinosaurs anyway.
Yeah.
So there's always somewhere bigger. So you could be a very large company and then you get listed and you become a big listing, but then there's a hedge fund. But then the hedge fund has to talk to the insurance company that owns half the thing, and then the superannuation fund. On and on it goes. But we need lots of mammals because that's what drives. The mammals can pick up the APIs and start playing with them straight away.
Yeah.
Right? You and Colart can pick up, let's play with this. And there's almost no headwinds. There's no feet stuck up to your knees and dry cement preventing you from trying it.
Yeah, and we've made a decision. So when we look at all the research, and obviously you see the research, Troy, because Troy was a beta tester in our online Business Agility Foundations course. And the research...
very much, by the way.
Nice. Thank you for the recommendation. Here, guys, buy it. But
subliminal.
Subliminal, yeah. No, I do try to keep Agility Matter separate from Surge, but it's hard in this case. But Surge, we've decided as a vision, we will never have more than 10 people in the company.
Right.
Therefore, we must find partners for everything else.
Yeah, outsourcing and that kind of stuff, or outsource it via an API. Right.
Correct, 100%. So we want a family. And when we looked at the research, we saw that teams of 3 and 4 make sense, band of 50, tribe of 250, organizational limit of 600. It's there, clear as day. That is there.
Well, we had 7,000.
Yeah.
Okay, but we had franchisees, we had...
yes, perfect.
We had retail, we had manufacturing, we owned 2-3 factories, we had contract factories of all over the place. We had all sorts of different divisions and stuff, and it was just trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
7,000, Troy. What was everyone's last name?
Wong. Pretty much, but
it's hard, right? I mean, that's why I personally want a family. So I like your franchise approach though, because you create little miniature families. Did that work quite nicely, or?
The franchise, we went through so many different models of franchising, it was not even funny, right?
Mm.
That was for a children's clothing brand called NGY, and we'd modeled that around um, our own in-house designs and styling. But then we weren't using our own manufacturing for that. We put that out to someone else because our own manufacturers, our factories were giving us shitty pricing.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we turned around and said to them,
Love that.
we're not going to pay, we're not going to put our orders to you. They were shocked. And we said, no, you guys go and find your own orders. Yeah. Which worked in our favor in the end. But if
that's one of the things I actually promote, Troy. Internal competition. So you'll notice in the course I say that a customer is someone who has a choice and is the end value consumer, right? If they're not an end value consumer, they're a partner. And if they don't have a choice, they're an internal stakeholder.
Yeah.
Now, internal stakeholders are one of the most unproductive things you can have in an organization.
Yeah.
They just are. Partners are more productive because there's choice, but customers are the most productive because they have choice and they're the end consumer of the value. They understand the value. So bringing the customer as close as possible makes total sense. One of my theories is exactly what you did. And that is basically say, right, your unit, I'll only buy from you if you're competitive with the outside market.
Yeah. Well, no, they were structurally as independent units. And we just said, single swim.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. I actually say the same thing with accounting companies.
Yeah, well, the land that the factory's sitting on is worth more than you at the moment, so just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
If you crash and burn.
When I was an accountant, I used to say the same thing. I was like, you know what? If I think it was Air New Zealand at the time, if Air New Zealand was to go to market on our services, it would be cheaper to outsource our entire department.
Right.
And no one liked to hear that. Like, oh, but that wouldn't make any sense for Air New Zealand. Why? It's cheaper, it's better, less office space, the whole works. So because of that one realization, my team decided to basically up their game. Didn't work any harder, they just worked smarter. We became very, very productive. And what we did over time was as people left, we never replaced them.
Right.
So we had a team of 12 and we went down to a team of 4, and that was basically it. And bear in mind, technology came in, so it's a little bit unfair to say that, but in the day, we kept ourselves competitive. And I don't think we were ever rewarded for doing so. I got a fancy title.
That's another thing. Titles. Guys will compete for titles. Women, we don't care. Are we getting more time off?
No, and that's the thing. I think, and you can go down a real weird path of human evolution here, but yeah, on average, aggregatedly, men seem to want prestige more than women do. Or I should say, masculinity wants prestige over femininity. That's probably a better way of putting it, because not all men have femininity, etc., etc. And yeah, titles are an interesting thing. When Air New Zealand called everyone an analyst, everyone felt great. But their role hadn't changed. They just got called an analyst.
The title on their business cards changed.
Yeah.
I remember I had one lady, Lee Dunn. She was lovely. She was super effective. And I just said, look, I want you in charge of the shipping, the logistics. And she says, okay. And then she's like, well, what's the salary in there? And I said, oh, pretty much what you got at the moment. But we can incentivize it in other ways. And she did the numbers and said, not interested. So what do you mean?
Wow.
Whereas there was other guys in the department that were dying for the title and didn't care about the money. She was more like, well, make it worth my while. I said, well, the role's more interesting. It's more appropriate for you. She said, well, make it more appropriate financially. And okay.
Oh, but good on her, though, because that's one of the leading contributors to women being paid less than men, is the fact they don't ask. So I think I love that. I will quickly interject. Guys, it's 9 o'clock. There are 15 of you on the call. Ask a question if you want one answered, because there's been not one question tonight. But yeah, I find that quite fascinating as well. I'm loving, Troy, how this does all interlink to emergent strategy, right? And I was talking to a couple coaches earlier on. They were looking forward to this to be taught emergent strategy. I was like, I can tell you that in a sentence. Adapt based on new information. Done.
Yes, that was exactly Alistair. Alistair was like, he said, I would probably fail a Scrum course these days because the 200 pages long of complexity and layers and hierarchies and accretions or sediments of things to make it look like something more than what it is. I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody in Scrum, but he was like,
no, you won't. Well, you will be, but who cares?
That was what the entire agile mindset was trying to operate against, was the natural, formation of limestone.
Yeah.
That happens over time. You have to blow it up occasionally, or you have to keep looking at the thing and moving around it. Some stuff just.
But you know what's funny, Troy? And I put in the comments actually when you were talking. Does this sound familiar? When Alistair went to his boss and said, "Hey, there is no strategy. The strategy is to have no strategy. The process is to have no process."
Yeah,
he threw it out.
Yeah, should get the fuck out of my office. Bring me something back. I didn't spend all that money on you.
Give me a tangible step-by-step process. Now, the Surge framework, we have a step-by-step process. Do you actually need it? No. No. Have a coffee with me. I'll tell you everything you need to know in 20 minutes, and you won't need me. Right. But people don't want to know that. People like structure.
Wait. Now, on the theory side, yes. Okay. Now, then we jump to another wrinkle in the issue. Me and Long would sit there and things would get complicated, and we would look at stuff and go, how do we do this? Right? No. We would look for other people. We'd headhunt out of other companies. We'd get somebody, they'd sit there and they didn't know either. We came to this thing, we had this description of people as handle builders or handle turners, right? And often we were building handles, right?
Yeah.
And we needed help figuring out how to put the handle together. We would get someone into a large company and find out that they were a handle turner. They'd never built the handle in the first place, but they were paid good money to keep it turning, right?
Interesting. Okay.
And we ended up in this situation where you have to be involved in your business to understand, to take on the inputs and process them and bump into that I don't know factor and figure it out. It is a math problem. It's a philosophical problem. It's a values problem. They all come down the pipe.
Yeah.
And, your culture allows you to keep the handles turning. But those handles have to continually be either built something new or changed and adapted and still cranked around. And some people sit on the spectrum of they're much better and much more comfortable turning a handle versus some people are much more comfortable building them. We're all, got to do both, but we tend to sit one side of the spectrum or the other in terms of which we prefer. Do you like getting stuck into problems every day, or do you like to just do the same, turn the handle and then, if it gets jammed up, talk to someone else and they'll help you.
Yeah, and this is about, again, I'll put a pun in for the Business Agility Radar, right? This is cognitive diversity. You need a diverse amount of people for every problem solving. Otherwise, everything looks like a nail and you hit it with a hammer.
Absolutely.
And if you look at one of those on the course, you remember the concrete sequential, abstract randoms, that analysis?
Yes.
That's a perfect example. So I do that test with a lot of people. And the reason why I do it is because I go, right, this team feels really top heavy in one area. And I do the test. Yep, they're all abstract randoms. Right. They're all bloody creative people sparring around, driving me mental because I'm a concrete sequential to the max, like I am. If it's not in a linear line, it does my nutting. I can't help it. And if you waver from logic, I freak out. I can't. I'm on spectrum, so I find it very, very strange. Like people don't think like this, but I understand you don't. It's fine. But having that, as you say, a handle turner, handle maker, you need everyone in that team to make good decisions. And I think that's very key.
Part of the good decision is understanding where in the spectrum you are. If you're comfortable turning handles, that's fantastic. here's the paperwork that we need for the logistics for shipping, right? Now this stuff's going to change from time to time. Cool, but on the rate of change tends not to be high. Okay, so
Ah,
go for it. Just turn that handle. Everybody employs somebody in the admin that helps them out. Everybody employs someone that does a lot what we call housework, right? And
yep,
and then there's the people that are glue, right? There's the
yep,
people that manage to communicate between the 3, 4, the 100, or the team and the other teams. They translate and they stick things together. Then there's the people that just sit there and will cogitate on a tough problem and look
yep.
like they're doing nothing for a week, and then you get an email and you're like, oh God, put chalk mark somewhere, and you're like, wow, that's where that handle fits, or that's how that part of the handle's going to come together.
Oh, I totally agree, bro. I absolutely agree. I find it flabbergasting that one of the biggest ones I think is actually like, so I'm a talking thinker,
Mhm.
right? It's probably why I'm doing this show, because it actually helps me think, overcome problems. I'm thinking of a problem as I'm talking to you. I can't help it. It's actually a really good way of me doing it. I'm learning something new. Hopefully, you're enjoying it as well. People online, hopefully, you're learning something as well, or just at least get a glass of wine and enjoying yourself. Um, but you can't ask me a direct question like that and expect a coherent answer. I'll give you an answer. I'm a management consultant. I'll give you an answer.
Mm.
But it won't be a very good one. I need to go away and talk to a bunch of random people like I'm a crazy person in the corner. But
This,
that's me.
this is a really important point, okay? Because I ended up doing sort of consulting stuff, and I would often sit there and think, why are people paying me money? Because my experience isn't blowing shit up. It's going sideways. But and it was a lot of it was network effect. I had the network, the net was bringing in the work. But where does you know? I just got tripped up by that question there. What are your values, Mike?
Oh, sorry. I was twisting over. Forget you didn't see anything. This is a mirage. I'll just let you know. Apparently, there's been a complication with the live chat. So Sim's just come on and said that she had to exit back and forth to try and answer the question. That's probably why we've had 17 people come and go, and we haven't had any questions. I was kind of confused. So we have one question from Sim, and I'll be answering that shortly afterwards. But sorry, go for it.
All right. Well, I kind of lost the trail of where I was going with that one. Um,
Sorry.
what
How people think differently?
that element of diversity is
Yeah.
um, outwards facing diversity as well as inwards facing diversity. There was stuff
Yes.
going on in the marketplace with our customers, with our vendors that we're oblivious to, that other people from like um, as a company based in Beijing, we had people from Russia and Poland and the US and Switzerland, myself from New Zealand. We had an intimate, an eclectic bunch of people.
Love it. Yep.
One girl from Pakistan who could drink you under the table any night of the week, right? Uh,
Yep.
and they would often come with insights or data that
Beautiful.
you'd never you'd like, oh, well, where did you find that, or how did you see it?
Mm.
It was just like right there in front, and you just don't access it. Okay, it felt like a blind person has a different sensory exploration of the world,
Yep.
or someone in a wheelchair is going to come across a whole bunch of hassles around the architecture that you just don't even think of. And it was that
Mm.
kind of out of the blue, but right in front of your face kind of inputs that we were getting, the more diverse the team.
Yeah. And it's interesting. That's why we use the word cognitive diversity and not just diversity.
Mhm.
Because what you can take this multiple ways, but the way it was designed was complete diversity of thought. And that could be how you're upbrought, your culture. It could be your upbringing and which school you went to. It could be what you've studied, which books you've read. cognitive diversity to fit the problem is what you need for every single customer centric design of an organization. And it's actually the biggest one. I don't know if you realize, Troy, but out of the 400 people odd who've done the business agility radar, that's been the biggest bugbear of theirs. They hate the word cognitive diversity.
Why?
And I've always asked them why. They're like, I just prefer the word diversity. And I said, is it because you've captured on to the media spin at the moment on diversity? Like you've bought into that, but you don't understand the reason why. Like for instance, putting a customer on the board is far more important than having an even male and female board.
Right.
Put a female on the customer on the board. I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is though, is diversity is a very important thing. Very important thing. We want to make sure we have a diverse board. But cognitive diversity is more important because if you have, 50% women, 50% men, 12% people who are not heterosexual, completely make perfect makeup, but they all think the same, went to the same school. You have not got cognitive diversity.
Diversity, yeah, and they don't have the same viewpoint as one customer. Who's
correct?
Who's going, guys? I just want this delivered because Sears is going to burn me if I don't, and you're not thinking about that portion of it all.
You don't care about my pain. You just care about your product, which goes on to the next one, right? So, customer experience over product centricity.
All right. Well, and the other thing, there's a sort of a cultural thing in China is that people don't. And I honestly don't know whether it's just China. I think people in general don't want to put on the table problems or mistakes that they might feel that they're responsible for.
But why do you think that is?
Well, do you like being wrong, or do you like making mistakes that cost money, or do you just like, does the boss bawl you out, or do other people belittle?
There you go. Yeah. Your first two statements, I'll say, nah, I love failing. As I said to you earlier on, so I've had 8 businesses, 7 have failed. I've loved it. I love failure. Bring it on. Sorry, Colart, let's fail again. We'll learn more and we'll do even better next time. I love failure.
Sorry,
but
Colart won't let you fail.
He's a great business partner because he's everything. This is the first time, Troy, I've had a business partner.
Right. Well,
I've always got it alone.
I prefer operating with a partner.
I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. And
I find that, yeah. What are you finding from it? Having a partner versus not having a partner?
Cognitive diversity.
What do you think of this? Oh, really? Out your mouth?
Well, he'll tell me I'm an absolute idiot. Like, that's a bad idea, Michael. He'll say it in a nice way, of course. He'll say it in his Colot way. In the the coaching way of and do you really think that would cause what is the outcome you're looking to achieve with that on that LinkedIn post?
Colot has honed this skill of listening and just threading things to just let it come out, and he's got a great organic sense. Here's the funny thing is, I was away from New Zealand for 30 odd years, and when I first sort of landed back, it was a few years back, I didn't really have a network here. I didn't know anyone.
Of course, you've been away, yeah.
So, funnily enough, I reached out to Alistair Coburn and said, "Hey,
buddy,
do you know anybody in New Zealand?" And he's like, "Well, there's," he put me in touch with, I think, Joe Oslander, and Joe put me in touch with Colart. And I liked these people because they've got that kind of mindset of just exploring and being open and doing stuff, and they're handle builders, or at least they're looking at the handle and saying, well, if we'll turn it this way, will it continue that way, or can we pull it apart and do something slightly different? They're doing the emergent strategy thing.
Yeah, Colart is definitely that. It's he's skilled. When he agreed to join Surge, I was just like, really?
Mm-hmm.
What the hell am I bringing to this? And it's funny because he's made me realize, and he's made me grown as a business owner, that I have got things to give, and that's one of Colart's I guess, treats, I would say, is he's made me realize that I really, this is what you need in business. You need cognitive diversity to actually solve problems, because I was always hitting it the same way.
Mm.
Say 7 businesses failed very similarly each time. I even tried the socialist approach. I gave the business to the employees, thinking that would solve the problem. It never did. They just thought I was the boss still.
Yeah.
Even though they owned 20% of the business.
Yeah, but see, the culture had started right from scratch. They came
Correct.
on that basis, and then you tried to change it by fear, right?
Gifting shares out.
There you go, you're owners now, and they're like,
let's do this.
We didn't sign up for that, and that's part of what I talked about. We ended up with these silos and layers of people that were their mental model of what we were doing was sort of stuck in a time frame. That's okay. We got used to that.
Yeah.
And some people they were like a virus. We had to literally put them in a different office, and because they were old school and connected, and we could trust them, and they were useful for certain things, but there was no way we'd let new people in an office sit next to them, because they would immediately infect the people, and then we would have we wouldn't fire those guys, but whoever got infected, we'd have to fire straight away. Otherwise it'd go like wildfire.
That's interesting. Troy, we are quite over time. I didn't realize that. Bad facilitation, Michael, but I will answer our one question. I do wonder if everyone's asked questions and we haven't actually seen them because of the chat being down. I wonder why the chat was down. But Sim did ask, Mike, here's a question for you. And we'll both answer it, Troy, anyway. What are your values? Well, we've spoken about a few of them already. So my values are strategic agility over strategic planning, cognitive diversity over specialization, customer experience over product centricity, and employee empowerment over hierarchies. So a slight joke there, Sim, by the way. So we have a thing called the Business Agility Radar, which is the business agility values. And they're the things I do 100% believe in because they create better organizations. I'll give a quick view over myself. So my goals in life are actually to reduce suicides. So one of my big things of myself is I go through cycles of depressive and euphoria and depressive. And lots of people, obviously, on those cycles commit suicide. And it's very sad and it's very preventable from my point of view. What I've learned from this mind set is that giving somebody a purpose in life can basically drive them away from making rash decisions like that. So I kind of went, that's my guiding star, right? That's what I want to do. How can I help that? What can I make a dig in the universe on that aspect? So for me, it was about, okay, you spend more time with your work colleagues than you do your own family. I can't fix the ratio, but I can fix the work environment. And I got to the point where going, business agility is everything that I did wrong in my previous businesses. I did not have an adaptable, flexible, and responsive business. I did not have a customer-centric business, a people-centric business. I didn't have a family. When you create that, you get bigger employee satisfaction scores, which means they love their job, which means they don't want to go home and do bad stuff to their family, to themselves. So what are my values? I have a couple of values that link to that vision. Always be truthful. I will never lie. One of my biggest values I believe in. Complete transparency, which is bad in business, actually. It's kind of like slammed me a little bit. I'm always completely transparent. You want to know my strategy, where I'm going next? Just ask me. I'll tell you. I'm not going to lie. And I focus on people over anything else. So, I mean, me and Troy were making jokes about how do we fix the COVID problem. And I even said to you, Troy, didn't I? I said, hey, we've got to let so many people die. However, my thought process on that is I'm trying to save more lives later. So I will always think of the long-term impacts to society and mental health and lives than the short-term pain, which is probably where I come to in my fourth value, which is on objectivity. I'm very objective. I want to focus on the always learning, reflecting, and adapting to situation. I think that's it. I kind of made them all connect for you, Sim. I hope that didn't sound too fake or rehearsed, because that kind of is who I am. What about you, Troy? Troy, what's your values in life?
Well, Finally, you just talk about the suicide thing, because that's a huge issue, and I've had way too many friends uh, taking their own lives over the last 5 years, so or
Ah, shit.
less. But yeah, that's an important one. I think I'm old school. My value is do unto others.
Love it.
I believe you've got to give to get, but the idea in living life is to have a meaningful life, whatever that might mean for you. Some people have all sorts of ways of finding meaning, and that's part of life, is figuring out your own meaning. But the values, I think, is do unto others and
Mm,
trying to do the right thing when you can, at the time that you can, right? So I would probably vary from you in that sense of,
mm,
if I'm running a business, I have interests that I need to protect. But there is a just line that if I haven't delivered or it's been incorrect on my part, then I have to honor that. That's part of it. Honor is and respect and trust in business is the foundation of doing anything.
yeah, trust. Trust is a beautiful. Trust is an absolutely beautiful value to have, though,
But
because we
trust
don't trust each other
well,
in society.
trust is built on the expectation that we'll do the right thing, and we can,
Yeah,
as a value, try and do the right thing for the
yeah,
people that you can do it for. So it might be a little bit short termist. You might say, well, I want to do this for 2 million people die now and 400 million people die in the future, and I'm a bit more, I will try and do my best for the 2 million right now, because
and,
those other 400 million, that's getting a bit too abstract for me.
correct. And I will not say you're wrong. And this is probably something I've learned over the years. I would say my more adolescent years, I would be like, Troy, you're completely wrong. Get out of here. But now I realize that life's not black and white. There is a whole lot of gray. And if you and me went into the COVID room and we said, you know what, let's talk about the solution, we would come up with a very gray answer. And as long as it had the outcome we both wanted, and it's good, we both want what's best for society, and we would come up with a better solution together than we would apart.
That's yeah, and the solution may or may not look like what we either of us thought when we started mixing things together.
100%. And this is why I'm a big believer in polarity management. It's a technique. You saw it in the course. I always give some conflict resolution. And if anyone wants to know about that, let me know. I'll flick to you for free. It's not a big deal. I love conflict resolution. Why? It makes you happier. Like if you have A and B arguing over something, the main thing to look at is going, okay, what is actually the delta here? How do we get a solution together and reduce and mitigate the risks together? It's not rocket science. It's emotions. We are humans. Humans are based on empathy. Show some. Which is, again, for someone who's on the spectrum, that's quite funny to say. But we have high empathy, by the way, but we don't show it. It's probably one of the biggest things there.
Yeah, look, internal to the company and external to the company, it was kind of interesting in China to see what would happen. It was like the Chinese sit there and they would come up with set pieces.
Yeah.
We're going to say this and set the customer up for that. And then I'm going to say this is not available and therefore we need to use that. Right. And it was a set piece. They were trying to push or railroad a client in a certain way. And then they would do it interdepartmentally. And I would look at this and go, this is getting all too Machiavellian. It's bad enough when you're external to the company, but when you're doing it to each other, it's just, let's go sit down and let's just put the actual facts on the table, right? Let's open it up, the actual problem set, and trust that we can
trust. Is that word again?
Trust that we can all do the right thing for each other. It might be weighted more to their advantage at this point or our advantage at this point, but that's not the point, right? The point is, can we come up with a suitable solution? My rule of thumb is if everybody's equally upset or unhappy, then we've got a reasonable compromise.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but there was this tendency to want to game each other, and
Yeah.
I was like, it's just makes life even more complicated. The transparency that you're talking about is a hard thing to do, but it actually makes life a lot, even a business. It it simplifies things, even though from first blush it feels like it's going to make things complicated. But if we tell the customer we're incompetent because we didn't find the supplier on time, what are they going to think? I was like, well, I don't think we're the only vendor that's done that.
Exactly.
Okay. And at least it's the honest truth. And they now get it early because they don't have 2 weeks of you playing some game, and myself included.
Yep.
Then we've lost 2 weeks before we come to an actual solution. So yeah, I mean, like these values are very, very, very old and cliche, but they've stuck around for a reason.
Yeah, and I love your honesty on that one. But to your transparency comment, I totally agree. It took me a decade of failed friendships, failed businesses. Like, if you were to go, Troy, and talk to someone 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, 6 years ago, on who is Michael Law, you'd have different answers. I would change who I was to match whichever environment I was in. I was a chameleon.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until someone said to me, I think about 6, 7 years ago, oh, Mike's great, he's a chameleon.
Oh.
And I was like, is that a good thing?
Mm.
I thought, maybe that's why I'm having so many problems, because I'm not actually transparent. And it's hard, Troy. Like the first couple of years of being transparent, and I don't mean radical candor,
Mm.
as in like telling the truth, hard truth, because I don't actually like that. I think it's quite bad. But being transparent in who you actually are as a human being.
Mm.
I give you an example. I had a meeting today with Novavi, who's on the call last week,
Mhm.
and we're looking at how we can work together. Transparency again. And I'm being completely transparent with them. This is what we're doing. This is what we're charging. This is our mission. This is our thing. That just wouldn't happen in any other environment. If you were a butchery, like I used to own a butchery, you would never do that because you give information away and someone would use it against you. In our industry, it's beautiful. I remember it was Horia. He sort of just looked at me and was like, yep, that's good. Let's just test it and see what happens. There was no judgmental. There was no like taking the information and actually like using it against me. And I even said to him, like, look, I'll be honest, like I've been burned so many times that 10% of me doesn't, he's always looking for a way out.
Mm.
He's like, that's fine. That's totally fine. I understand that.
Mm.
And it's just like this, I'm loving this industry because it's like people are like that. They want what's best for the customer. They want what's best for the society. They don't actually care about the money, or money comes. Like, it's not saying we don't make money, but it's like you don't focus on the money. And that's what one of those studies in 2019 said. Companies that don't focus on money, that focus on customers, make more money than those that focus on money.
Mm.
I love that. It's awesome. Sim, I hope that was your question answered. We got a little bit down in the dirt with our emotions there. It was nice. Sim says fab. And Sim's giving me a good idea, by the way. I'm going to do a polarity management in 3-minute video. I'll try and do it this weekend for you, Sim. Since I'm thinking about it. So
Do it. 3 minute. That you can cover that pretty.
I can get 3 minutes. Yeah, get a whiteboard.
I like your 3 minute pitches. That's how I come across you in the first place.
Oh, is it? I wondered how you came. I wonder how we linked at some stage. Like I saw this guy Troy popping up, and I was like, "Oh, he seems cool."
Okay, your 3 minute pitch. I was like, I like that. That's cool. It's kind of that. It had that beat that sort of covered one point, pretty deep but pretty quick. Boom. I'm not a video person. I will never sit here and watch this thing ever again that we've produced because it's, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours of stuff. And I'm just
hour and a half now. Wow, geez, we've gone on a little bit.
you know, that transparency thing or that respect and I can remember one time we screwed up and ordered something cool. And it was, I would spend a lot of time arguing backwards and forwards with customers, depending on whose fault it was, right? And one came to me and said, oh, what happened? And I explained to him, and he's like, so does that mean we pay or the customer pays? And I said, we pay. He's like, oh no.
Yeah.
And I was like, we did it. I've gone through the lot. It's not their fault. Often customers would make changes and stuff late in the schedule. And when you're manufacturing something, that just screws the production line completely up. And we're talking atoms here, not software. So once something's cut, you can't uncut it. Anyway, it wasn't their fault. And I just turned around and let the customer know that we would be remaking it and air freighting it at our costs. And he was just that the customer was, he was the buyer for the customer, and he was flabbergasted. He was like, that's amazing. He says, ordinarily would just be a drawn out cat fight.
Yeah, and again, that's where you get to that.
Well, the thing is, he came back.
Agile principle, right? Oh wow, I should remember this. Contract negotiation. Oh, I've forgotten the value of agile. That's an embarrassment. We'll cut this bit out. Cut.
Oh, keep it in.
What is it? Oh, Sim, you tell me. Gary, you tell me. Greg, you tell me. What's going on? I'm looking it up. Hang on. We're not ending with a mistake on for me.
Well, look, the customer came back to me the next season and tripled the orders that he was placing with us. Right, so it cost us up front, but then we earned the trust of the customer and continued to build the business because we took the responsibility for what was going on. And if you put in stuff with large numbers, you'll realize how sucky that can get.
And that's customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I found it. And it's funny. And I could talk to you for hours about that story of Alistair as well, because that's what's really, I'm collecting a whole bunch of neural networks actually, of what you're saying, because I've always found the Agile Manifesto so prescriptive, even though it's not meant to be. I found it prescriptive, like it's values and principles. And it's like, I remember someone saying to me once, throw the Bible away and just have one rule. I'll translate because it's a swear word. Don't be a dick.
Don't be evil. Google.
Don't be. Yeah. Oh, Google. Yeah. Hello.
Tried that, didn't they?
Yeah, tried that. Changed it because the NSA got. But yeah, it's like don't be a dick. And with Agile, it's like just talk to your customer and adapt to what they need.
Well, I think it's allowing the adults to talk to adults, or in a sense
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Again, everybody pretty much understands the hypothesis of emergent strategies in the sense of we put something forward, we check it, we reflect on it, and then we alter things according to our reflection. Implementation, that's tough because a lot of that stuff, but the paperwork's already done. The rules have been like that for 5 years.
Yeah.
HR can't agree with that. Or there's legal, requirements that.
And you see with the course, right, what I talk about, the fact that some companies can't actually be business agility. And one of those reasons is actually because sometimes you have governing constraints that mean your industry is actually complicated. It's not actually a complex beast. And if that's the case, and again, Edward Snowden will probably kill me for butchering his Cynefin model, but I love talking about this way, because if you have governing constraints, you cannot have pure adaptability, which means you probably don't need that way, that along that business agility way. Again, I know some guys in the IC Agile who kill me for saying this, but it's like, no, business agility is not for everyone. It doesn't make any sense. Change the rules, change the governance, and then you can start thinking about actually going agile. We have another question, by the way. It's like Sim's got her Sim's got her thing working now, so she's like, right, question number 2. And Troy, you tell me if you got to go, buddy, because I know it's late now. But do you think there's any difference between mindsets and values?
Yes, definitely. Okay.
Yeah. Go on, you go first. You go first.
Well, look, values are something that you hold core, and there's cultural values there, and there's, biopsychosocial models of values that we get instilled in us before we're too young to even understand what those values are. Okay. There's certain expectations that we live up to, that I would consider values, and a mindset is something else. A mindset is something that can be something that queries on those values. And I'm saying there's a lot of good values out there, right?
Hmm.
Um, Values, and again, I funnily enough, as much of as a radical I used to be, I kind of like old school values, right?
Yeah.
Um, don't consume more than you need to consume.
Yeah.
You know, do the right things for people. Do the right thing for yourself. Be honest where you can.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a bit of fudging there, and if you really, that's part of the thing. The difference between a mindset and a value is values tend to be a lot more set in stone, whereas mindsets can generally flux a lot more than we give ourselves credit for doing, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
that's the hard part. When the incentive goes against you, it's easy to drop the values, right?
Yeah.
When that order is going to cost you a fortune because you've made a mistake, your values are going to start costing you money. And your
Yeah.
mindset will swing towards, well, maybe the customer did this, and we can litigate it, or we can argue it from this angle.
Mm.
So yeah, two definitely different things.
I think so as well. So from my point of view, I think mindset leads to values. So just has, again, for those who have not been on the course, I use the onions as an example, the agile onion. For those who don't know the agile onion, it's where you have tools and processes on the outside. You go principles, values, mindset. And I look at it like, well, it's the mindset that leads to values, the values that leads to principles, the principles that leads to tools and process. Your mindset is the most difficult thing to change. If you can change it at all. I mean, I use the quote, it takes 3 years to change culture in an organization. And I'll say it again, 'cause I love saying this, right? I can teach you Scrum in 3 minutes. I can implement Scrum in 3 weeks. I can get benefits from Scrum in 3 months. I have a case study now for exactly that. And I can change your culture, your organization in 3 years.
Mm.
There's a big difference in culture. And that's because it's all about mindset. Now, if we think about that, once the mindset changes, we tend to actually start changing our values to match. And this is where I ask an organization, what's your end goal? Is it a mindset shift? Yes. Customer centricity mindset, growth mindset, all the fancy words. Is that really your actual, is that what you want though? What's the objectives you're looking to achieve from that? And normally they want a value driven organization.
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely different to a mindset shift. So you could implement a value driven organization within a year, 2 years, depending on the organization size and complexity and restructures required, etc. But I tend to find that if you want to change mindset, it's like 3 years. And that's because you're probably going to get rid of 30 to 40% of your staff.
Oh, it's easier to change the person than it is to change the person.
And
Right
I
off.
don't, Troy. I never recommend. I never will recommend actually removing people. I don't believe in that. I always believe finding the best value that they can produce, but they naturally quit.
Mm.
If an organization goes, so I talked to Niha. So she's on the Halloween special for those who want to look, and she's a HR specialist. And Niha, we need to finish this. We keep talking about it. We started looking at how to onboard the right people, team fit, band fit, tribe fit, organizational fit, right? And we said that, the research shows you can't go more than one stage above the team, band, tribe, organization. And the same as like Michael Sahada's work on bands, right? Cultural umbrellas. I can't remember what he says, but cultural fit. I probably butchered what he says, but anyway, if your organization is a amber, you shouldn't hire more than an orange. You hire a green, you're going to basically have people leave. Same thing. If you take an organization and you start implementing green procedures, everyone who's amber is going to leave. And this is why I said to you in the course, like when we start going and saying, right, we're an amber organization, so we're a command and control hierarchy organization, and we're going to go to green. If you move too quickly, everyone leaves.
Oh, I've got a great story for you.
Go for it. Go for it.
I was, in the office, and I was looking for, I think it was shipping or some, I can't remember the role now. And this lady interviewed, and I'm still at the stage where I'm still interviewing people, and the company was deep red at the time. Most Chinese companies are operating on that red mode. It's just nature of the beast up there. And I'm a foreigner, Chinese company, Chinese staff, Chinese woman in front of me who'd spent time in the US, a lot of time, studied there, worked there, come back to China. And she's great. I really wanted to employ her. I said to her, you're fantastic, but you just won't fit in here. And she's like, what? I said, well, it's a really Chinese company, and I don't think you Chinese that much anymore. And she was like, what are you saying? You're a foreigner in this company, and you're telling me that I won't fit in. And she really argued the case, and she was kind of upset about it. And I was like
it.
Well, I can float along the surface on a lot of this stuff. I tell you what, I really want to employ you. I'll give you a week to see what you think, right? And I don't mind paying you for the thing. Just come in and see what you think. She lasted a day. She was
Wow.
she was like at amber, and we're at red, and she came in there and she just came up to me and she's like, I'm sorry, I just can't cope with this. And that's a classic example of, as much as I wanted that person in the company wasn't going to allow her to be absorbed into it, and she wasn't going to put up with it. So
Yeah.
you've got to sort of wriggle things along. And again, this is how we ended up with parts of the company that had very different thinking from other parts of the company.
Yeah. The HR aspect is actually very important. It's very important. And it's one of those things, if you have a company, let's say 600 people, and you're going, right, my competitive advantage is decreasing. I need to do something. We need to transform. Okay, great. So you may go, okay, I'm going to come to Surge and get a current state analysis.
No.
And you get a current state analysis, right? And we tell you you're amber.
Right.
Right, I want green. And then if you go too quickly, you'll lose people. If you hire the wrong people, it'll go wrong. If you restructure the wrong way, it'll go wrong. And this is the reason why I think it was like 80% of transformations fail. And they go, oh, Agile's to blame. No. You try to implement something outside of the requirements of the organization. And this is, obviously, I just noticed, I added Sim on LinkedIn and noticed the company she works for. So I hope you don't mind, Sim, I'll use it as an example. I'm a big fan of actually scaled agile framework. And a lot of agile people will say, that's not agile. No, you know what? It's not. It's not agile. What's great is it's a gateway drug. It is an amazing gateway drug. It is what Alistair said to you and what you've seen as well and what I've seen as well. It is the structure that you require in an amber organization to go to orange. To create an objective, outcome-focused organization, a first stepping stone. And if you do that, you will basically move from amber to orange, preparing yourself for the drug that you cannot stop taking because it's so intoxicating of empowering employees to find the right ways of doing things to adapt to customer needs.
Well, you need that positive spiral up in terms of the infection.
Yeah, totally.
Going from, positive to positive out into the broader thing. But you can end up
Totally.
silos that isolate themselves. They start punch ups amongst each other for no particular reason. Culture change is hard, right? It's
Yeah, definitely.
really, really hard.
Which is why I love when we see like the RFPs go on the government websites looking for agile transformation to change culture, done in 12 months. Nope, nope, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Are you gonna sack everybody and then hire everyone again? Yeah, maybe.
But even doing that, even sacking everybody, still within the constraints of what that department's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, totally. Look at Nokia. Look at Spark. Look at, for those that don't know, Spark is our telecommunication network. But look at Nokia. Let's use Nokia as an example, right? Nokia. So I use Nokia and Air New Zealand as an example because I was a shareholder of Air New Zealand and I sold based on their COVID response.
Mm-hmm.
And again, hashtag not financial advice. I will be a financial analyst in the next few months, but I'm still not going to take the... Anyway. So Nokia had its biggest financial years 3 years in a row. Made a lot of money. And then in 2008, recession came in, and they used it as an example to transform the organization and take the 30% cut in FTE. So yes, they transformed the organization and got productivity gains. Well, I would say more they got efficiency gains, to be fair.
Yeah.
But what really happened is the employees' culture degraded. Oh shit. Who's next?
Yes.
Am I next? When's the next culling coming? And I've seen this time and time again when you start removing people, when you start doing restructures that actually remove 30% of staff. Yes, you save cost. I'm not saying you don't save cost. But unless your strategy is actually to commoditize your product, it's a very bad thing to do. And then the customer. What did the customers of Nokia do when they found out they reduced 30% of their staff? They stopped buying the product.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, I'm not sure if we were off camera or on camera. We've been talking for about 4 hours now. But we stopped. People actually control the market. So Nokia's sales plummeted because people didn't believe in Nokia anymore.
Trust.
And the same thing's happening with Air New Zealand right now. Right now, people look at Air New Zealand like it's just another Jetstar or anybody else. They've lost their competitive advantage of being a people-centric culture. So now, I mean, I fly Air Chathams, by the way. Wanganui, best place to live in the world. Small little plug there. Air Chathams took over from Air New Zealand, so we all love Air Chathams. But I have friends now in Palmerston North in Wellington who will fly Jetstar now because of the price. I said, but didn't you used to fly Air New Zealand? Yeah, but I guess Jetstar's so much cheaper. I said, they've always been cheaper. Yeah, I guess I didn't care beforehand. And that small change of seeing the news saying they'll get rid of 4,000 people when they've had 3-4 years of their largest returns. They had a $1.7 billion current asset pool. And they've sacked 4,000 people.
I tell you what, I wouldn't have wanted to make the choice.
God, no. I feel sorry for the executive team. I really do.
You know?
Like,
again, who is the customer here? Because when our customers aren't there, right? Is it our stuff? Is it the
sorry. I just saw Sim's next question. Geez, that's a doozy, Sim. Yeah, but who is the customer? I totally agree. Is it the government because they own 51% of the shares?
Is it the customer though? Is it the New Zealand public? Is it the person who buys a ticket? Is it the shareholder?
Well, and this is the thing. So I go back to the customer's the customer, and they're the ones that's most important. What we'll find though is in the short term, you will annoy the shareholder. And if your board is made up of shareholders, you will be outranked very quickly. So as part of my thesis, I found that customer transformations that invoked the board had a negative correlation with customer value, which basically said that if you was to do an agile transformation and you involve the board, you will get a negative correlation on customer value. And the reason why that is simple. The board want to see profits now.
Right.
And they'll stop you.
That's their fiduciary duty. If you're a listed entity, your duty is to make the most money possible for your shareholders.
That's not what it says, Troy. It says in the benefit of the shareholders, right? It doesn't determine a time frame.
Okay, so then that's open. I think we've already, personally, I think we've covered a lot of ground on the financial side.
Yeah, no, you're right. In fact, I'm going to have a conversation with you on financials. We need a different podcast for this, for financials, because I did not realize that you are a one and you're like me on the financials. So, hey, we'll have one last question from Sim, and I think we'll call it a night. Is that okay with you, Troy?
Sounds fine.
Because this is, I didn't realize the time's getting on a bit. Hang on, Sim, so get your question up. I have a fancy system, but I have no director. I need a director. Who would like to volunteer and come into my garage and become my audiovisual person? So Sim says, and Troy, if you don't know about this, I'll give you a context. I'm curious, what's your opinion of the Spark's agile transformation now that the initial dust has settled?
Well, I can't comment on this one. This is a question outside of my bailiwick because I don't know anything about Spark's agile transformation whatsoever. Unfortunately, sorry.
So I'll give you some context from my point of view, because I obviously I know some of the people who did it, and I know some of the engineers. I know all the people who left Spark, engineer-wise. So Spark did the one big bang approach of an agile transformation.
Right.
They went from this day, we will be agile.
Okay.
And they tried the whole, if you don't like it, you can leave.
Right.
And people left, of course. I had about 3 friends who left. I didn't realize how many people I knew that worked for Spark. And so
when was this transformation? Like pre-COVID, post-COVID?
Yeah, pre-COVID. So this was, I think it was, it hit the deadline 18 months ago or 24 months ago.
Okay.
About that.
So
yeah,
I wasn't even here. So like I wasn't even in New Zealand. Has anybody noticed a difference in the service, the quality of the service, the attentiveness of it?
Beautiful question.
What's going on? That's the only way I would notice, right?
And that's the thing, right? So I've seen no KPIs. I would love. Do you know what's funny? We should get the enterprise coach on next week. I'm going to bug him.
Does Sim work for Spark, or should I?
No. See, I won't mention the company, Sim, because it might be bad.
No. It's just, Spark was New Zealand Telecom many years ago.
Correct. Yeah. So
that was a job for life until they privatized or nationalized or something, and they split into Chorus and Spark. And the job for life, thousands of people got sliced off the job for life.
Yep.
Okay. So you could almost say that it's in Spark's DNA to do these large transformations that are basically excuses of cutting timber.
I actually think that's a very wise critique there, actually, Troy. Is it in their DNA? Is it actually a cultural? Is that? That's a good point. Is that just how the board sees things? Let's do big transformations so we can cut costs and use it under the disguise of adapting to our environment. That's a very good point.
Well, they've done it a few times.
They have.
Your name changes here and there, bits and pieces. But again, you're talking to someone that hasn't spent a lot of time here, so that's a total outsider's opinion. I use Spark. They seem okay. People in their stores are nice.
No, Chris. So Chris Tuhoy is the enterprise coach there. So I'm gonna Chris, if you're listening or you see this, I'm gonna call you.
You're up next Friday.
I'm gonna get you in next Friday. So Chris Tuhoy, I'll give my view now, and hopefully actually he doesn't view this, doesn't see it first, and then I can reflect on both decisions of what I just said. So I don't like big transformations. The reason why is because the data shows it's bad. It's bad for culture. It's bad for productivity. It's bad for customer experience. It's not a good thing. I believe in the pilot and scale what works, throw out what doesn't. But again, that's my bias and that's who I am. I know that Spark has a very bad, so in my industry, Troy, they have a very bad view. So a lot of coaches say that Spark's implementation was terrible, but I'm a data guy. So Spark is one of the highest people they've done. So 25 of the people in an organization, which is quite small, I know, but 25 of them did the bar. And they're the highest results out of all the telecommunication companies.
Right.
Now, bear in mind, I'll caveat this. I need to bug Vodafone for some more results because I only got 9 results from Vodafone, and 2 Degrees gave me 1. So,
well, then there's a low polling factor here. There's a bit of a skew in the.
So please don't take this as they're more agile than the rest of the telecommunication networks. But that's all I have at the moment. If it's correct, then they have a very good agile outcome.
Right.
If it's correct and their KPIs are increasing customer value, I would say it's a great implementation. However, it's not what I'm seeing from the figures. I'm seeing the fact is that they've implemented tools and process. They've implemented a shift in their frameworks. They've got rid of 30% of their staff. They've taken the McKinsey approach to things. And I cannot see that seeing long-term customer value. Just the PR alone so Troy, you wasn't here, but the PR all the way through the media was talking about how agile or go home was the context. I cannot see that having long-term benefits. What Jason did, CEO of Vodafone, by supporting MediaWorks to ban racism, will have a much larger customer tribal connection than any agile ways of working.
Well, the question that comes to my mind is Spark's agile transformation from the small description you're giving me is a tools and process thing. It's not a mindset thing. If it's a mindset thing, it's culture. And if it's culture, it starts at the top. We got the bosses of Spark. Are they exhibiting agile mindset attributes? Is that possible? And one more thing, just before I go, because I've got to.
I know, it's 10 o'clock.
It's just gone past, but China has changed massively, and China is the past master at taking areas, they call them special economic zones. They've got multiple SEZs around China, and they will try different policies there. They will, this is tax-free, this is duty-free, this is deregulated on this space, doesn't require that. They try it. If it functions well, they'll move it to another SEZ, like another special economic zone. That works fine. They start rolling it out throughout China. Right?
Love it.
They do these experiments, let's take a step, let's see what happens. And then sometimes they'll try it in other areas throughout China. Doesn't work. The culture doesn't fit there. China's more like Europe than you would think, And they're like, it works in this area, we'll keep it there. Oh, it works everywhere, we'll roll it throughout everywhere. Oh, some places work, some places don't. They're very good at not expecting uniformity.
Yeah. So I just did a quick view, and I would hypothesize, and I'm going to try and get the Spark guys on next week actually now.
Do that.
Because, so I went if you go to Jason's profile, the CEO of Vodafone, he is constantly on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And let's be fair, LinkedIn is the new Facebook for like professionals.
Right.
And he's constantly on there.
Look.
Well, we should go to Facebook because they're dodgy. He's constantly on there. He's constantly posting. He says good stuff. He's leading by example. So the CEO of Spark is Jolie Johnson.
All right.
Hodson, sorry. I've gone back 2 months. She hasn't had a single post. And she just liked a bunch of stuff. Some puppies from police.
Should she be spending her time on LinkedIn?
Yes.
That's a question for you and Sim to discuss.
Yeah, I think because that could trigger a whole different conversation. But I would say the CEO's job is to be the chief influential officer, the chief value officer, the person who is holding the flag for the future. So should we call it quits to that?
We should.
We should.
You communicated that very well. I appreciate you inviting me on, and Colin for putting my hand up. And yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, Troy. Well, we must have enjoyed it because it's been 2 hours now, which is my wife's gonna kill me. For those who are overseas, it's 10 p.m. here in New Zealand, so it's quite a lot late. But thank you, Troy.
All right.
I'll just sign off and I'll chat to you in a second.
Okay.
Wow, how cool was that? I'm starting to find out that we may need a few more hours for these conversations because it's so entertaining. I guess some of my reflections from this. Did you guys notice how Troy, nothing to do with Agile, nothing, but yet came to the same conclusions because that is what is happening in the world. Since the 1950s, we are seeing commoditization of products, new value streams being added. We are seeing a whole bunch of innovations basically being taken by new companies and the incumbents being left behind. I am starting to think, can incumbents ever catch up? Is a reflection question I want to ask you. You let me know. Flip me a message on LinkedIn. Add Troy on LinkedIn as well. He's very active and we have some good fun on LinkedIn. So again, thank you for staying if you've stayed the whole time. Thank you for watching it later on if you've watched this later on. And good night from Agility Matters.